Texas, in its infinite wisdom, has changed precisely nothing since the West Texas apocalypse in terms of how that state deals with its rules or its regulations or its laws about how to keep this from happening again. They have changed nothing. Actually, I should not say that. It's not true. They did change one thing. Texas state government is totally controlled by Republicans, right? And the Republicans in Texas state government did decide they would change one thing in the wake of what happened at West Texas. Back to our friend Chase Koch. The Dallas Morning News reports that in May of this year, a few months after Chase Koch, the head of fertilizer for Koch Industries, a few months after Chase Koch discovered his newfound love and affection for Greg Abbott, to whom he had never given money before, a few months after Chase Koch's first time ever $25,000 donation to Greg Abbott and another $50,000 at least from other Koch entities, including Chase Koch's dad, Charles. According to the Dallas Morning News, a few months after that money came in and the Koch brothers flew Greg Abbott out to one of their Meet the Candidate retreats with lots of other rich donors, Greg Abbott did decide that he was going to change one thing in Texas about storing dangerous chemicals there. And specifically storing chemicals like ammonium nitrate fertilizer, which almost wiped one Texas town off the map. He did decide he was going to change one thing. He decided that the public would no longer be allowed to know where large quantities of explosive chemicals were stored in Texas. That's the change. For decades, companies storing significant quantities of potentially hazardous material, like, say, explosive fertilizer, they would have to report that to the state. And the state then maintained a database of that information. They'd make that information available to anybody who asked. So the news media, regular citizens, somebody thinking about moving to the neighborhood, anybody. The public had a right to know that information. For decades, the state maintained and provided that information. But not anymore. In May, Greg Abbott, as Attorney General of the state of Texas, he issued the one change in law or policy that has happened in Texas since the explosion in West. He said that state agencies henceforth, quote, must withhold this information from the public. Quote, upon review, we find the submitted information about chemical storage in Texas is now confidential. It wasn't before, but now it's confidential. Attorney General Greg Abbott issuing that legally binding opinion in May. He did so rather quietly. The press in Texas, however, noticed, and last week, Greg Abbott was asked how on earth this made sense. Why should the state now start keeping secret from the people in Texas this information that people used to be able to get? Why should this now be secret? Now that we've had this great disaster and everybody's worried about it, why can't we know now? We used to be able to know. This was Greg Abbott's response.
You know, Jay, you know where they are. If you drive around, let's bear this down. If you're living in West Texas, you know that there's some facility there, and you have the right to ask the people in West Texas, hey, what chemicals do you have in there?
Just drive around. Just drive around. If you see something near your kid's school or near your house that looks chemically, just drive over there and regulate it yourself. The official advice from Republican-controlled Texas state government to the citizens of that state is that Texas residents should go door to door in their communities trying to surmise whether or not there might be any dangerous chemicals stored in any facilities nearby. Then they should ask those proprietors of those facilities to tell them about the danger. This is from the Texas Tribune, which is one of the outlets that was there when Greg Abbott was explaining that people should go door to door to facilities in the area to find out what chemicals are there. Quote, when asked if citizens had the right to go on to companies' private property to ask for that information, Attorney General Abbott initially said, absolutely. Abbott corrected himself seconds later. Just to make clear, you may not be able to walk on private property, he said, but you can send an email or letter or notice to anyone who owns any kind of private property or facility. An email or a letter or a notice. This is the new plan in Texas. Happy 2014. There are something between 26 and 27 million people living in the state of Texas. Each of you is responsible for driving around, figuring out what looks suspicious, finding contact information for any of those suspicious businesses you might have seen while driving around. Whether or not they are holding dangerous chemicals on site, it is then your responsibility to find their contact information, write to them, ask them to disclose to you their chemical inventories and whether or not they might be dangerous to you and your kids, and then just sit back and wait for the safety to roll in. Since then, the Houston Chronicle newspaper and local TV stations in Texas have been trying to take the state's advice, asking chemical companies directly, hey, what do you got there? They basically found mixed results when they've been asking, but a lot of companies just telling them to buzz off. And those are media organizations. What happens when it's just somebody who lives down the block? In response to criticism over this new plan, Greg Abbott's campaign manager tweeted out this sort of snarky comment to one of the reporters who's been covering the controversy, saying basically, oh, listen, this wouldn't be so hard to do, what Greg Abbott's saying. He said, quote, they're called fire departments. Let me know if I can help track them down for you. Meaning, oh, stop whining. Just ask the local fire department, and they'll tell you about all the dangerous chemicals stored in private facilities in your town. After that came out from Greg Abbott's campaign manager, though, a spokesman for Greg Abbott at the Attorney General's office had to issue another clarifying statement saying, never mind about that fire department thing. Saying, actually, under this new ruling from Greg Abbott, local fire departments are probably not going to tell you either. I mean, they might, but they might not, and they certainly don't have to. We have a lot of ideological debate in our politics about the proper size of government, what government is for, right? A lot of that debate is very esoteric, very theoretical. But Rick Perry is going to run for president again on the basis of the Texas miracle, where he says things like not having any zoning laws and not having any fire codes. Those are the things that make Texas great, and we should elect him president because he will apply that Texas miracle to the whole country. And Greg Abbott is the man who's running to replace Rick Perry in Texas. He's the Republican candidate for governor in Texas this year. Now, we reached out to Koch Industries today for a comment, but we have not heard back. Their spokesman told the Dallas Morning News, though, that there is absolutely no connection between the Koch's newfound interest in campaign contributions to Greg Abbott and Greg Abbott's subsequent ruling on storing chemicals in Texas. They call that, quote, a vague and improbable quid pro quo linkage. However, Greg Abbott is running a Koch Industries-supported campaign for governor in Texas on a platform that includes his idea that the solution to this happening in one little Texas town is that you should no longer be allowed to know if this is a possibility in your town, too.